go. I guess I've got maybe more of a comment for you. You say you support the Second Amendment.
Yes.
And the Constitution, basically, I think what most people are here for and the impetus behind this bill is mainly people are now here begging for their God-given constitutionally backed rights. We should be in here now with law enforcement testimony should be asking government to do something. What the people are, government's already taken something away that should have never been taken away. And I think that's the point of this bill. So I guess, you know, I love when the people come, because when I start thinking or start worrying maybe we're doing the right thing, they start reminding me of the oath that I took. And I put my hand on my Bible when I did that. And all this bill is doing is trying to put it back to the way our country has always been. And it's about the citizens and not the government or the police. And that's what really troubles me. I appreciate what you do. One of my best friends in this world that I would die for is a police officer. We grew up like brothers. I'm an only child. But we've had long conversations, you know, about this issue. And I just don't understand why that if somebody had a weapon, they're a law-abiding citizen, why does that make law enforcement feel uncomfortable?
In response, and I'll give you a personal opinion on this, and people may disagree with that, you could argue the rights that are provided by wording of our Constitution, but we as a state also require people to go through a process where they apply for a driver's license. They have to take a test, they have to take an eye test, and they get a license to operate a vehicle.
Can I stop you right there? Can you tell me where the vehicle section is in our Constitution?
It's chapter 56, sir. And that does require people to get a license and an application and then go through a process. The current concealed weapons permit does the same thing. We're talking about taking that away and letting them have a firearm, but we would still require them to have a process to go through to operate a vehicle. I know that it doesn't say in our Constitution people have a right to get behind a car. I understand that. But to me, those processes, a car can kill just as easily as a gun can.
This is a good segue. We just received testimony that there was in the Constitution about driving. What the officer stated was Section 56 is a statute, a government-imposed statute, not our Constitution.
Exactly.
So let's make it clear to the subcommittee that driving is a privilege and not a right.
That's exactly
Our
right.
Constitution provides our rights. I want this audience to be misled by
Exactly
testimony.
right. Yeah, there's not a right to keep and bear automobiles in the Constitution.
And to my last point, I just want to kind of touch on and say, no offense in saying any of this, we keep talking about the fundamental rights that are brought forth to us by the Constitution, and I agree 100% with the fact that this is, the Second Amendment is a constitutional right. I also agree that probably more so than that is the ability to vote. Last year, this body required that you have to have a photo ID, or in essence, a permit, that says that you're eligible to vote. So now we have to show photo ID to vote, but we do not have to show photo ID to carry a gun. I don't know that I understand the logic behind that, but we are concerned about that and just want to make that point.
So would you be happy with an amendment that says anybody could show a valid driver's license or a state issued ID to carry the weapon?
I'd be happy if they could show a valid license or a valid permit that said that they had the proper training and education and background checks. Yes.
Well, I would love, if we could do that mutually, I would love to do that with a voter to make sure people were informed before they voted.
I know you've only had a day, and we talked a little bit yesterday, but did you talk to law enforcement in Arizona, Alaska, Vermont, any of these other states?
No, sir, I have not.
Would you mind if I just give you a little anecdotal evidence?
Sure.
I had a call from a law enforcement official from a municipality and told me he was against this bill. And he proceeded to tell me that he'd been in law enforcement all over the world and all over this country. So I proceeded to ask him if he had ever been, worked in Arizona. And he said he had been quite some time ago. And I said, well, do you have any friends that are still in law enforcement in Arizona? And he said he did. So I called and spoke with one of them. And he informed me that they were against it in the very beginning, law enforcement was, but then they found out that the criminals were a lot more afraid than the average citizens once they figured out everybody could be armed. And that the people were a lot safer and their jobs had gotten easier. And I would just advise, anytime someone comes from the state to argue against a bill, to realize the principles of federalism and the fact that states are great incubators of democracy and great areas for things to be tried. So we're not the first. I mean, set the constitutional argument aside, we are not the first state to try to do this. And the other states that's done it, you haven't heard of any of these mass shootings going on in those states. And I would hope that law enforcement in this state, representing law enforcement around the state, here in these committee hearings, would talk to these other law enforcement officers, the others and brothers in blue, so to speak, in other states that have enacted this, because I think we've just got such a fear, and it's been done by the media, such a fear of guns, and government has killed way more people than guns have, and when governments have done this, it's been after they've seized the guns. So that's where I stand on it. But I do wish, we're going to have full committee hearings, and we're going to have obviously, hopefully we get to the floor. But between now and then, I wish that law enforcement would talk with some of these other states that have passed these laws like I have.
I would not discount the fact that they probably have less criminals committing crime because they see somebody with a gun on. I don't discount that whatsoever. I do say that I would probably suspect that in those cities, counties, wherever the states that have enacted those laws, they probably had a lot more calls to the point where somebody's walking around with a gun. That's still going to take away from the time of having to go back and check and see what that individual's doing. They're still going to have to follow up with that individual to see what's going on.
I have always fought for funding for law enforcement. I've always supported law enforcement. I have tremendous respect because you guys put your lives on the line every day. But as far as making your job easier versus making the people safer, I'd rather the people be safer. And I think they'll be safer if they
So,
all right, well, thank you.
thank you.